There is one silly mistake that kids do quite often that leads them to have fights with their friends. And in fact, if they only knew about this silly mistake, they would be able to avoid a lot of these fights. So if you're a parent whose child might be having a lot of conflicts, or if you're a teacher whose students are having a lot of conflicts and fights among themselves, then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to cover the steps to kind of resolve conflicts. And there are only 3 steps, but there might be a lot of details inside them. Second, we will also talk a little bit about behavior science. Why do we behave the way we behave, especially during conflicts? And third, we will also learn some steps, some techniques from cognitive behavior therapy so that we are able to know how to talk during these conflicts. And this might be quite a lot, and therefore I've prepared a practice sheet, a practice document, which has a lot of practical scenarios which you can use with your kids, with your students, to actually help them internalize these steps. So let's begin. So what is the silliest mistake that people make, not only kids, but people make, which leads to conflicts? Well, let's understand this by an example. So there are 3 kids and they want to have like a fun evening. They want to play their video games. So, they go to one friend's house and they have an Xbox, but it only has 2 controllers. So only 2 players can play at a time. So what they decide is that, 2 people will play and whoever loses will kind of switch out and then the third person will switch in their place. All right. And it was working really fine until in one game, both the players tied and none of them want to give away the controller. And the third person is like, no, you don't want me to play, or you don't want me to be friends with you all. You're doing cheating over here. And the 2 players are like, no, I don't want to give up my controller. He should give up the controller because, he has been winning so many games. He played so many games. So he should be the one giving it. Whereas this player is like, hey, I should not be. The other person should be because they lost the last game against me. So they, of course, would have lost it. I don't know, some glitch happened and they won this time. And everybody is like having a heated argument. In fact, soon enough, this leads to a physical fight. People are scratching each other and, they are even starting to break the equipment. The one controller is broken down right now and people are in tears. Now at that moment, if you would have asked these kids, what do you want? One kid might have said that, I don't want to be friends with these people. Another one might have said that, I want to slap that guy. He hit me really hard. Another one might have said that I want to break this controller. I don't want anyone to play this game anymore. And look at this. All 3 of them, their goal is very different from what the goal was actually in the beginning. The goal was to actually have fun together, have a nice evening playing games. But now suddenly their goal has become something else. And in fact, this new goal is detrimental to their original goal. It's completely opposite of their original goal, right? And that's the silliest mistake that kids and even adults do when in a conflict. They lose track of what the actual goal was. What did they really want? And that's the first step of conflict resolution. What do you really want? And to understand this and, have more practice of this, I have over here a practice sheet where you can find multiple scenarios. And what I want you to do is with your kids, look at those scenarios one by one and kind of predict what does it look like that the person wants based on how they are reacting. And what do you think they really wanted before this conflict happened? Right? Do this for multiple scenarios and then you would also have the solutions at the bottom to look at. Now coming back. Now that the first step is knowing what you really want. That's pretty simple, pretty easy, right? If you just know what you want, you might be able to do things in line with that goal. Definitely not opposite to that goal. But you know what? It's really hard to find out what you really want, especially when you are in the middle of a conflict. Your whole biology, your whole evolution is against you finding out what you really want. Yes. For this, we'll have to understand a little bit of behavior science. So let's jump right in. What happens, what leads to a behavior, first step is that, you observe what's happening in and around you. All right. And this is going to be common for everyone. We see what's happening. And then the second step is that our brain tries to make up a story. It tries to tell us why this is happening, what's happening, is this a threat to us or not. Now, this is a subjective experience. Different people seeing the same thing can come up with different stories. Some might say that, hey, this is nice. Some might say that, hey, what, this is insulting. This is, beneath me. Why is this even happening? They might even perceive the same thing as a threat. Now, the third part is that the way you made up the story would lead to various chemicals being released and you feeling an emotion. If you told yourself a story that, hey, this is a threat, then in that case your brain will activate the adrenal glands and then ask it to release adrenaline. And that hormone is going to make some changes in your body, which is making you ready for fighting or running away, in fact. So that's the fourth step. After you feel an emotion, you actually have a behavior. So it's a 4-step process leading up to you behaving the certain way that you do. All right, it's not just one step. And this is interesting part because, now that we know that stories are something that can lead to emotions and that can lead to behavior, this means that if I change the story, my emotions and my behaviors are going to be changed. If I just correct my story, then these things can change. But that's also not that easy, and we'll talk about that, how to do that later on. But yeah, focus over here. Your adrenaline glands, that's gonna make your brain and body be ready to fight. You will have a heart rate increased, your blood vessels will kind of constrict, your insulin will be less, and your glucose, because your glucose has to be there in your blood streams right now, so that different parts of the muscles and body can actually get that glucose and be ready to fight. All right, so many changes are happening. And side note over here for teachers and even parents, here what I do is I take some time to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the biology with my students. I tell them about, hey, the science of circulatory system. How is the circulatory system in our body, the blood vessels, the veins, and the heart, and how do they change because of adrenaline hormone being present into our body. I also talk about digestive system and how that kind of gets slowed down right now, because when you are threatened, you need to fight, or you need to run away. You don't need to digest the food that is there in your body. All right, I also talk about insulin and how it helps, and how in this scenario your body does not actually need insulin. I mean, in fact, on the opposite, it needs the glucose to come out in the bloodstream, because now you have to fight and your muscles might need that energy, right? So how that insulin kind of comes into picture over here. I also go into a little bit of physics, because now imagine if glucose is out in the bloodstream, then viscosity of the blood has increased, and that's gonna increase the friction between the blood vessels and the blood, which can later on lead to plaque formation and calcification and heart attacks, right? So that's, we can take a longer detour and talk a little bit about biology and physics if you want to, and ChatGPT could be super helpful in doing so if you are at home and just trying to do it by yourself. But nice opportunity. Now coming back to the story, so one of the reasons why getting to think about what's my real reason over here, what's my real goal over here is really hard, because we have evolved in such a way to, if we have a threatening story, then our immediate response is of fear and adrenaline, and our behavior is to fight or run. Your hands and legs are going to have a lot of blood, and therefore they are ready to pump. Also, the second reason is that your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, is kind of shut down. Why? Well, imagine in the earlier days, if you had a snake in front of you and your brain is thinking about, hey, is this a friendly snake, or is this a venomous snake, a threatening snake? Should I run away, or should I pet the snake? Your chances of survival have gone down, right? And that's the reason why in these scenarios, the brain has evolved to kind of shut your prefrontal cortex, so that you don't have to think, you have to just run or fight. Directly, right? You might even have seen some movies on military where you might have seen some generals talk about, hey, I don't want my soldiers to be thinking or feeling, I just want them to quickly go ahead and act, right? That's where this whole philosophy is coming from, actually. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but any which ways. So these are the two reasons why your brain or you will find it really hard to find the real goal. your physical body is ready to run or fight, and your brain is kind of like, the logical part of the brain is not thinking right. It's not going to help you find out the real reason. So what can you do actually to find out what is your real goal? So by now you know why it is really hard to find out your real goal, but we still need to find that out, right? So here are some steps that would help you. Number one is just relax. I know it's very cliched, but let me try to get to a little bit of more depth, because that's what we do in this, this channel. So what actually happens is that, adrenaline hormone, that is a short-lived hormone, meaning that if you're just able to relax and forget about the threat, in just 5 minutes, your body will be able to pass out that adrenaline, and then the changes will kind of like start to revert. That means your prefrontal cortex might start to get more and more active, and therefore you would have more chances to find out what your real goal is. Yeah. So what do you do for relaxing? I mean, the common tips that you might have already heard, that, hey, you know what? Just take deep breaths, or go for a walk, or take a time break, or definitely get out of that heated physical environment. Get out of that so that you are able to kind of like relax better. So that's mostly it, right? Actually, no. Here's a twist in the story. Now, feel that you are physically relaxed, but in your mind you're still thinking about, hey, how could that guy talk to me like this? I'll just go back and just shout at him. So you're like taking deep breaths. How could that guy really think about this? Oh my God. That's not helping you relax, right? You're physically maybe relaxed, and you're doing the right things. You're out of that situation, you're taking deep breaths, but still mentally you are agitated, right? So that's where the next step comes in, which is actually the most important part: improve safety. This is the second biggest realization about conflicts. The first big thing is that people do not behave in line with what their real goal is. And the second biggest thing is that, conflicts happen if one or both the parties are feeling unsafe about something, right? For example, let's go back to the scenario of a video game controller, right? The person who's not getting the opportunity, that person might be thinking that, hey, you know what? My story is, the story might be in their brain that, hey, maybe these people hate me, or they don't consider me as friend, and they don't want me to participate or play with them. They're gonna throw me out of this friendship circle. And they might be feeling scared and worried, and that's where the adrenaline rush might be coming in. Or they might be like, hey, this is so unfair. Why am I the one who's sitting out and not getting opportunity to play? And that might be the reason why they are getting frustrated and angry, and that's where the adrenaline might be coming in from, right? So different kind of stories they might be telling themselves, and that's what might be making them feel unsafe. Let's take another example. Let's say you had a football match and you were having an opportunity to score a goal, but you missed somehow, and the team lost the game by one goal. And there's this one guy in the team who's like blaming you for it. Like, hey, how could you miss that? It was such an easy, simple goal. Oh my God, why did you do that? We lost the game all because of you. And here you might be thinking that, hey, you know what? Your story could be that, hey, they're right. I'm really bad at sports. I should not be even playing it. I should not be part of this team. And you might be just, self-doubting. And because of that, you might be getting emotional. Or you might be feeling that, hey, you know what? This guy is going to put the blame on me, and everybody else will start hating me. And then everybody will kick me out of this whole team, and I will lose my friends. And because of that, you might be feeling emotional. So there are like multiple stories that you could have been telling yourself, because of which you might be feeling different emotions. And that's what is making you feel unsafe. So the first thing that you need to do is basically verify your story. Is my story actually correct? Ask questions if you have to, or think about the probabilities of this happening, and then say to yourself, maybe this is not the real story, or some other story might be there, right? Basically, do whatever you have to verify your story, and therefore start to feel safe. Because until you feel safe, you would not be able to know what your real goal is, and therefore the conflict will not get resolved, right? So that's the next step. And as a practice, what I would want you to do is go to that table where I've given multiple scenarios, and for each scenario, you can ask your students, you can ask your kids to actually think about, what is the story this person might be telling themselves, and what are the emotions they might be feeling. Here you can even use an emotion wheel. This is a really good practice for kids to kind of like start to speak about various emotions and know what emotion could be felt in which scenarios, and it's gonna help them a lot more in future scenarios. All right. Now coming back, after this you are physically and mentally relaxed, and now you are ready to actually know what your real goal is. So here is a question, a phrasing that might lead you to get to your real goal really well. First up, what do I really want? What's my real goal? Straight up that. Second part, what do I don't want? Definitely, like for example, I definitely don't want to lose my friends. I definitely do not want to have a unhappy evening. My night will be spoiled. My next few days are gonna be spoiled because of this. So I definitely don't want. So what do you want? What do you don't want? And also, what do I want for the relationship with other people over here? I don't want to give up on the relationship. I don't want to lose my friends and things like that. These questions would help you get closer and closer to knowing your real objective. And last but not the least, all of this could be avoided if you are able to predict a conflict well before in time. Just like how we have some earthquake predicting model machines. If somehow you have such kind of a trigger or a smell or a sense, then that would help you avoid all this kind of like trouble. And that's the last part. Predict conflicts early, and there are ways to do that. Here are some signs that can help you notice maybe a few minutes before a conflict actually erupts. Number one, you might see somebody attacking somebody else, and sometimes it's very obvious that they are like openly threatening or shouting or like abusing the other person, right? So that's a clear-cut tell that hey, a conflict is going to brew up or erupt really soon, right? Sometimes it's very subtle. The other person could be making sarcastic comments that, this person, yeah, of course, they are very smart. They're as smart as Einstein. Kids do that quite a lot, right? So that could be a sign that, hey, there's a likelihood that a conflict might start. So just be aware, just be watchful. Second sign could be that, hey, somebody is gone in defensive mode, right? Like, hey, somebody is like trying to explain quite a lot about themselves. Like, hey, I did this because of so and so. I did that because of so and so reasons. I was not at fault. Somebody else was at fault. So they're like doing all those kind of things, and that's an obvious way of knowing that hey, somebody is defending themselves, and therefore a conflict might start. But sometimes it's very subtle. Sometimes the person might just go into a silent mode. They're just seeing things, might even be smiling, but inside there could be a big conflict brewing inside them, right? So these are some signs, attacking or defending themselves, and sometimes they are obvious, sometimes they are like subtle. And if you are watchful about these cues, these should trigger your senses that hey, a conflict might happen, might not happen. That's okay, that's fine. But if you have this trigger, you might be able to avoid a conflict from erupting, and therefore avoid all the hassle that you might have to go through. All right, so by now you know what is the silliest mistake that we make that can lead to conflict, which is basically not knowing what our main goal is and doing things that are completely not aligned, completely away from the goal, in fact, right? So with these steps, you'll be now able to figure out, even in the heat of the moment, what your actual goal is. And with that, you'll be able to take the conversation in the right direction and hopefully even resolve your conflict. So if you like this video, then give it a thumbs up. And if you still want to know what happens next, what if the other person is still not listening to me, is still not actually ready to resolve the conflict, what to do next? That's going to be part of my next video. The remaining steps are going to be in that. So do subscribe if you're not already subscribed.